Those photos actually have, most of them were in the Loras archives, and those are photos that a lot of us haven't seen for years, and thank goodness Mike Gibson and his crew got those out, and we got some information from those photos and from others. Some of them are really, I think, very interesting. I'm intrigued by the picture of Father Al at his first Mass in St. Lucas, and that would have been in the spring of '36. So that was really there was 3 little girls with him. Those were his 3 nieces, and there's still one of the nieces is still alive. So I think that's pretty special. The picture of him too that a lot of people may comment on is the picture of him in his white uniform, and we believe that that was his last visit home. He had that white uniform, and when we were here in October for the services, one of the chaplains from the Pentagon was here and said that white uniform was a limited edition uniform for people who were serving in warm climates, and he knew he was going to be stationed in Hawaii on board the ship. So it's one that always seems to draw attention. I think the other one is seeing my aunt christening the ship that was named after Father Al. You know, you can just, it brings back a lot of memories from days gone past. It's like looking at an old family album, but now you're kind of getting the input from others as to what kind of was going on at that time. And I find it very intriguing, and as did others.
So eventually, wood from the deck of the USS Oklahoma was recovered, and some of it came into the possession of Gerald Pline of Epworth, Iowa, and he fabricated a number of rosaries, and they're very finely crafted, each of the beads with that deck wood there, as well as a crucifix that hangs now in the display case here at Christ the King. So we came into the possession of the rosary that we have in 2013 when Dan Murray, who's a cousin of Father Schmitt, his father, had gotten one of the rosaries from Mr. Pline, and so donated. He thought this was the place where, you know, in reverence and respect for Father Schmitt, it would be recognized, and it shouldn't just be, you know, in his own personal possession in a home, but that people would be able to sense that connection with the actual materials that were part of that tragic day. On the Mass on October 8th, where we received the remains, and Archbishop Jacobs was celebrating the Mass here, that many of the family and dignitaries were present, as well as priests of the Archdiocese. At the time of the movement into the Liturgy of the Eucharist, he just acknowledged that this was the chalice that Father Schmitt used the morning of Pearl Harbor Day and had celebrated Mass, and it was eventually recovered a little bit later. And so I think just a kind of awe-filled silence fell upon the congregation that day, and it was just a real sense of connection and solidarity with him, that kind of going beyond time at that moment. And so every Mass is kind of a moment beyond time, but this was in a special way. I mean, the sacrifice of Christ and the sacrifice of Father Schmitt kind of converged at that moment.
Wow.
So we're very grateful to Phil Larson, who had kept in storage much of the marble from the Visitation Academy altar in the chapel, had stored it for over 20 years, and when the Visitation was also decommissioned as a chapel. And so this was the occasion for him to bring that out and to fabricate the repository for the remains. And so I think his craft is very evident there, and he was able to inscribe the motto of the college, Pro Deo et Patria, on that. And so it's not an altar and not a crypt in the same strict way, but it does afford us the opportunity as well, if they do discover more remains as they continue their forensic research there at the Punch Bowl Cemetery, we could have the opportunity to place those with the remainder of the remains that are already there.
Yeah, we are very happy that and honored to be able to have the remains of Father Al here in Christ the King Chapel. And this was, they're positioned right up under the statue of Mary and Joseph. And it's really pretty amazing to think that this chapel, you know, was dedicated to him, and now he's able to come back and permanently be here. The neat thing, and we're already starting to see some of that influence, is the young kids that are coming to Mass here or services here are learning the story, and that's so important. And to the point where some of them really have kind of changed directions that they're headed in hopes that they can mirror maybe the path that he followed in terms of how he lived his life. So.
And the Latin on the
Yeah,
the marble
that's
there?
really special. Loras's motto is Pro Deo et Patria, meaning for God and country. And one of the windows here, you'll see it on the window at the church also, but it was also inscribed on the marble. And I don't know of anyone who lived that motto any better than Father Al did. And I think his direction, his behavior, the way he performed was influenced by the environment that he came from. And he was very proud of his time on this campus.